There are places on Earth where entry isn't just difficult, it's forbidden. By law, by geography, or by forces that don't negotiate. A monastery perched on a cliff where women face prison for setting foot inside. A desert so hot that NASA recorded surface temperatures capable of killing within minutes. No permit will save you there. Today, we'll show you a city that sentenced trespassers to death for 5 centuries. A forest where authorities stopped publishing body counts to avoid attracting more visitors. And an underground labyrinth where 10 sealed levels remain off-limits even to researchers. We'll take you to a continent governed by treaty alone, where 70% of the land is legally untouchable, and to a tomb guarded by rivers of mercury that no government dares open. And at the end, you'll discover why breathing too close to thousand-year-old art can land you in permanent exile from one of humanity's greatest treasures. Ready? We begin. What if the very name of a place is a death sentence for anyone who dares to cross its threshold without permission? For nearly 5 centuries, the Forbidden City in the heart of Beijing remained a void on the map for the common people. A massive architectural complex where entry was strictly regulated by the highest authority. This colossal fortress of yellow-tiled roofs and deep crimson walls spans over 720,000 square meters, creating a city within a city that functioned under its own set of absolute laws. From the air, the layout reveals a perfect geometric symmetry, a labyrinth of courtyards and halls designed to reflect the cosmic order where the center was off-limits to the rest of the world. The scale is overwhelming. A collection of 980 buildings surrounded by a moat 52 meters wide and walls 10 meters high, reinforced with thick layers of earth to prevent any tunnel from reaching the interior. Every architectural detail served as a barrier, from the massive bronze lions guarding the entrances to the intricate paving stones that were laid in 15 layers to ensure no assassin could dig their way inside. The sensory experience of the site is defined by the heavy silence of the expansive stone plazas and the rhythmic repetition of thousand-year-old wooden columns. The color palette is restricted to imperial yellow and ceremonial red, shades that were legally reserved for the ruling elite, making any unauthorized use of these colors a crime against the state. Within these walls, the concept of privacy did not exist for the thousands of servants and officials. Yet for the outside world, the interior was a total mystery, a ghost kingdom hidden behind impenetrable gates. Legend says the complex contains exactly 9,999 rooms, a number chosen because only the Celestial Palace could possess 10,000. This deliberate imperfection highlights the tension between earthly power and divine restriction. Even today, despite being a museum, vast sections of the complex remain locked, their interiors gathering dust and shadows, untouched by the millions who walk the main axes. The prohibition was not merely a physical wall, but a psychological boundary that defined Chinese society for generations. The legacy of this isolation is etched into the very stones of the Meridian Gate, where the transition from the public world to the private realm of the elite was absolute and final. The ban on entering this sacred precinct remained in full legal force for exactly 505 years. The cold currents of San Francisco Bay move in a relentless cycle, creating a natural barrier that for decades functioned as the ultimate perimeter of isolation. Alcatraz Island sits as a jagged pedestal of sandstone and concrete, rising from the gray water like a fortress designed by geography itself before human hands ever touched its soil. During its 29 years as a federal penitentiary, this rock was defined not by who lived there, but by the absolute impossibility of unauthorized entry or exit. The architecture of the main cell house reflects a philosophy of total containment, where steel bars were reinforced with iron ore and every corridor was designed to be observed from multiple angles at all times. Fog often swallows the island entirely, leaving only the dull glow of the lighthouse to mark a territory that was legally and physically severed from the American mainland. The surrounding water rarely rises above 10 degrees Celsius, a temperature that triggers muscle paralysis within minutes for anyone attempting to cross the 1.5 miles of open bay. This thermal trap served as the prison's final, invisible wall, making the distance to the lights of the city feel like an unreachable galaxy. Between 1934 and 1963, the facility maintained a reputation for being the only dead end in the judicial system, a place where the most volatile individuals were sent to be forgotten. Records show 14 distinct attempts to breach these walls from the inside, involving 36 men who tested the limits of the island's engineering. Most were intercepted by the armed guards in the elevated galleries or succumbed to the crushing pressure of the tides. The structures remain weathered by salt and wind, showing the decay of a machine built to withstand both human ingenuity and the elements. The most enduring mystery of the site centers on the events of June 1962, when 3 inmates vanished using a raft made of raincoats and a ventilation shaft widened with stolen spoons. While the official narrative suggests they drowned in the dark, turbulent waters, no physical evidence ever confirmed their deaths. The case remains open in the files of the United States Marshals Service, as the bay has never yielded the remains of the men who supposedly failed to conquer the rock. The concrete ruins stand silent today, holding the secrets of those who disappeared into the mist without a trace. More than 100 bodies are discovered within these dense volcanic shadows every single year, a number so alarming that the Japanese government officially ceased publishing annual statistics in 2011 to avoid fueling the site's dark reputation. Aokigahara Forest, stretching across 30 square kilometers at the northern base of Mount Fuji, is one of the most strictly monitored natural zones on the planet, where authority figures and local patrols enforce a rigid system of exclusion. This is not a standard national park for casual exploration, as vast sections of the territory are permanently closed to the public and marked by high fences or warning signs that explicitly forbid stepping off the few designated paths. The landscape itself seems designed to enforce this isolation, consisting of a hardened crust of volcanic rock from an eruption 12 centuries ago that is riddled with hundreds of hidden ice caves and deep fissures. The ground is an impenetrable tangle of roots that cannot penetrate the solid lava, forcing them to crawl across the surface in serpentine patterns that make every step treacherous for those who ignore the official prohibitions. Surveillance cameras are strategically positioned at every main entrance, and specialized teams conduct regular sweeps of the interior to intercept those who attempt to vanish into the thicket alone. The visual environment is defined by a suffocating density of hemlock and cypress trees, where the canopy is so thick that sunlight rarely reaches the mossy floor, creating a perpetual twilight even in the middle of the day. Because the forest grew over a massive deposit of magnetic iron ore, navigation tools become erratic and unreliable, rendering standard compasses useless as needles spin aimlessly in the silence. The porous volcanic rock acts as a natural acoustic insulator, absorbing all sound and creating a void where the wind disappears and the rustle of leaves is completely absent. Local authorities have established a permanent perimeter of checkpoints to monitor everyone entering the zone, ensuring that no one deviates into the restricted heart of the woods where the silence is absolute. The forest floor is a chaotic mosaic of emerald moss and jagged black stone, hiding cavities that can drop 10 meters into sub-zero darkness without warning. This geological trap, combined with the intense magnetic interference from the subterranean minerals, ensures that anyone who bypasses the government barriers enters a realm where the laws of orientation no longer apply. The air remains perfectly still among the twisted trunks, where the only thing heard is the sound of one's own breathing against a backdrop of total, heavy stillness. Every step outside the designated path here is considered a violation of national law, turning a natural landmark into a strictly regulated zone of isolation. Svartifoss waterfall, hidden within the Skaftafell wilderness in Iceland, operates under a paradox where the landscape is visible but physically untouchable. Authorities have imposed a total ban on free movement around the site, forcing every visitor to remain on a narrow, artificial strip of gravel and wood. To step onto the dark soil or touch the stone formations is to trigger an immediate legal response, as the entire perimeter is monitored to prevent even the slightest human interference with the fragile ecosystem. The visual centerpiece of this restricted area is a wall of geometric perfection, where jet-black basalt columns hang like a frozen pipe organ over a sharp drop. These pillars were not carved by tools, but formed through a rare process of rapid cooling lava that occurred approximately 8 million years ago, creating hexagonal prisms so precise they appear architectural. The contrast between the white falling water and the dark angular stone creates a scene of calculated, cold beauty that the government is determined to keep in a state of absolute stasis. The ground surrounding the falls is composed of rare mosses and volcanic sediments that take decades to recover from a single footprint, leading to the implementation of some of the strictest environmental protection laws in the North Atlantic. The silence of the canyon is broken only by the roar of the water, yet the presence of invisible boundaries is felt everywhere through the warning signs that mark the limits of human presence. Scientists monitor the erosion of the basalt daily, noting that the vibration of the falls, combined with the delicate balance of the soil, makes the area geologically unstable for anyone wandering off the trail. The mystery lies in how such a massive, powerful force of nature can be so vulnerable that a human shadow is deemed a threat to its structural integrity. While the view is open to the eyes, the physical territory belongs entirely to the state, and the price for curiosity is steep. Crossing the rope barrier or bypassing the official observation deck results in an immediate fine of up to 100,000 Icelandic krona. Access to the highest ancient palace in the world is governed by a set of rules that can change overnight without explanation. The Potala Palace stands as a massive white and ochre fortress atop the Red Hill in Lhasa, rising 3,700 meters above sea level. This architectural titan, containing over 1,000 rooms and 10,000 shrines, remains one of the most difficult destinations for a foreign traveler to reach. While its golden roofs gleam under the thin Himalayan air, the physical path to its gates is blocked by a complex bureaucratic wall known as the Tibet Travel Permit. This document is not a standard visa, and its issuance depends on shifting political climates that have seen the entire region sealed off from the outside world for months or even years at a time. Since 2008, the Chinese authorities have repeatedly frozen all foreign entry, turning this spiritual center into a ghost fortress for the international community. Between 2020 and 2023, the palace was effectively erased from the map of global tourism as borders remained locked and the few paths leading into the Tibetan plateau were severed. The structure itself is a labyrinth of stone and wood, with walls at the base measuring 5 meters thick to support the immense weight of 13 stories. Inside, The air is thick with the scent of yak butter lamps and the silence of centuries. Yet the corridors remain empty of independent explorers. Visitors are prohibited from wandering freely, and every movement within the region must be part of a pre-approved, strictly monitored itinerary. The scale of the palace is overwhelming, stretching over 400 meters in length, its sloping stone walls designed to withstand earthquakes and the harsh mountain winds. Dark crimson paint, made from local earth and minerals, coats the central red palace, contrasting sharply with the brilliant white of the surrounding living quarters. Even when the doors are technically open, the number of daily visitors is capped at a strict limit, and the permit process can be terminated without warning or compensation. The mystery of when the next total closure will occur hangs over every travel application, as the region remains one of the most sensitive territories on the planet. The high-altitude light creates sharp shadows across the palace facades, highlighting the isolation of a place that is visible from miles away but remains legally unreachable for many. Whether the gates will remain open for another season or vanish behind another period of total isolation is a question that currently has no definitive answer. Since the year 1046, a strict imperial decree has transformed this massive rock into a territory where half of the human population is legally forbidden to step. The Simonos Petra Monastery hangs over a 300-meter drop on the southern coast of the Mount Athos Peninsula, appearing more like a stone fortress emerging from the granite than a place of quiet contemplation. This architectural marvel, supported by multi-story wooden balconies and ancient masonry, remains one of the most secluded points in the Mediterranean due to a 1,000-year-old law known as the Avaton. While the rest of the European continent underwent centuries of social and legal revolutions, this monastic republic froze its borders to any female presence, creating a silent zone that begins exactly at the shoreline. The cliffs rise vertically from the Aegean Sea, forming a natural wall that complements the man-made barriers protecting the 20 monasteries scattered across the rugged terrain. From a distance, the structure of Simonos Petra looks like a cluster of stone towers, precariously balanced on a narrow needle of rock, surrounded by thick forests and steep ravines that offer no easy passage. The gray stone walls blend perfectly with the natural textures of the mountain, making the monastery look like a permanent extension of the cliffside. Access is restricted to a limited number of male pilgrims who must obtain a special permit, while the surrounding waters are patrolled to ensure the ancient boundary remains intact. The silence of the mountain is absolute, broken only by the sound of wind hitting the high wooden galleries that wrap around the upper floors of the main building. Even the animals kept on the peninsula are subject to these ancient restrictions, creating a biological isolation that has lasted for 10 centuries. The sheer scale of the monastery, with its 7 levels of cells and chapels stacked atop each other, reflects a period when isolation was the ultimate form of protection. Modern satellite imagery shows the intricate network of paths and stone stairs carved into the rock, yet these routes remain closed to the general public, regardless of their historical or architectural interest. Violating this territorial restriction is not merely a breach of religious tradition, but a criminal offense under Greek national law, punishable by up to 12 months of imprisonment. This makes the Simonos Petra Monastery and the wider territory of Mount Athos the only place in the European Union where a gender-based exclusion is formally recognized and enforced by state legislation. Holders of passports from the United States, the United Kingdom, and Israel face a near insurmountable wall of bureaucracy and outright denial when attempting to approach the vertical cliffs of the Fars province. For millions of people, the Naqsh-e Rostam necropolis is a forbidden zone, a silent fortress of stone that remains legally and physically inaccessible due to strict diplomatic barriers and heavy military presence. This is the final resting place of the Achaemenid kings, carved directly into a limestone ridge where the desert winds have scoured the rock for over 2 millennia. The site is defined by 4 massive crosses hewn into the cliffside, known as the Persian crosses, which serve as the monumental entrances to the tombs of Darius the Great, Xerxes I, Artaxerxes, and Darius II. These chambers are suspended high above the ground, creating a vertical city of the dead that watches over the arid plains with an imposing, silent authority. The scale of the carvings is immense, with the facade of each tomb stretching over 22 meters in height, making anyone standing at the base seem like a mere speck against the pale, sun-bleached stone. The rock face is not just a burial ground, but a massive canvas of propaganda, featuring intricate bas-reliefs that depict scenes of imperial triumph and divine investiture. One of the most striking carvings shows the Roman Emperor Valerian kneeling in submission before the Persian king Shapur I, a frozen moment of ancient geopolitical dominance that still resonates in the heavy atmosphere of the site. The precision of the stonework is baffling, as ancient craftsmen managed to achieve perfect symmetry and smooth surfaces on a sheer vertical plane without the aid of modern scaffolding or laser measurements. Access to the interior of the tombs is strictly prohibited, even for those few who manage to enter the country, as the chambers have been sealed to protect the fragile archaeological integrity from the elements and human interference. The surrounding area is frequently patrolled, and unauthorized drones are strictly forbidden, ensuring that the necropolis remains as isolated today as it was when the first chisel struck the rock in 570 before the Common Era. Visitors who do reach the site must navigate a landscape of extreme heat and blinding light, where the reflection off the limestone can be disorienting. The silence of the necropolis is absolute, broken only by the occasional call of a bird nesting in the high crevices of the royal facades. Beneath the tombs lies the Kabaye Zartosht, a mysterious square tower whose purpose remains one of the great unsolved puzzles of Persian history, with theories ranging from a fire temple to a royal treasury. The sheer age of the site means that the dust covering the ground has likely remained undisturbed for centuries, preserving the secrets of a dynasty that once ruled half the known world. Every inch of the cliff tells a story of power and mortality, etched into a geological formation that has survived earthquakes and the rise and fall of countless empires. The necropolis stands as a testament to a civilization that viewed stone as the only medium capable of carrying their legacy into eternity, creating a barrier of history that remains closed to much of the modern world. Even the most seasoned travelers find their path blocked by the reality of international law, leaving Naqsh-e Rostam as a ghost of the past that can only be viewed from a distance or through the lens of high-altitude surveillance. The site remains a monumental enigma, 25 centuries of history guarded by the twin forces of ancient tradition and modern military restriction. Every square inch of this vast stone expanse is monitored by a digital eye that never blinks. Tiananmen Square, in the heart of Beijing, functions as the most heavily guarded public space on the planet, where the very concept of openness exists in constant tension with absolute state authority. While thousands of visitors walk across these gray paving stones daily, the entry process resembles the boarding of an international flight rather than a casual stroll through a city center. Access is strictly regulated through a mandatory pre-registration system, where every individual must link their national identity card or passport to a specific time slot, creating a digital trail of every soul that enters the perimeter. Massive security checkpoints, equipped with high-resolution scanners and metal detectors, flank every entrance, ensuring that not a single unauthorized object or symbol crosses the boundary. The architecture itself serves a dual purpose, providing a stage for national pride while offering no place to hide from the omnipresent gaze of the security apparatus. Plainclothes officers blend into the crowds of tourists, their presence felt rather than seen, while uniformed patrols move in precise formations across the open concrete. The landscape is defined by its terrifying scale, stretching across 44 hectares of flat, featureless ground that leaves every person exposed to observation from every possible angle. Even the lighting serves the system of control, with massive lampposts doubling as mounting points for sophisticated sensor arrays that track movement patterns in real time. During sensitive dates, the entire area can be sealed off within minutes, transforming from a tourist destination into a hollowed-out fortress of stone and silence. The silence here is artificial, maintained by the knowledge that a single whispered word or an unauthorized gesture will be detected long before it can echo against the walls of the Forbidden City. This is a place where the infrastructure of surveillance has become as permanent as the monuments themselves, woven into the very fabric of the urban design. The sophisticated facial recognition algorithms are capable of identifying a single face among a crowd of tens of thousands in less than a second. It is a paradox of modern urbanism, a central plaza that belongs to the people in name only, while every breath taken within its borders is logged into a central database. The sheer density of the monitoring network creates a weight that sits heavy on the air, a constant reminder that visibility here is not a choice, but a requirement. Over 60,000 high-definition cameras are positioned around the square and its immediate surroundings, ensuring that for every single visitor, there are dozens of lenses capturing their every move from the moment they step onto the stones. In 1963, a simple home renovation in the Nevşehir province of Turkey led to the crumbling of a basement wall and the discovery of a silent, lightless void that had been hidden for centuries. This accidental breach revealed the entrance to Derinkuyu, a massive subterranean metropolis carved directly into the soft volcanic rock of Cappadocia, plunging 85 meters into the earth. While the upper sections are now a destination for explorers, the vast majority of this vertical labyrinth remains strictly off-limits to the public, guarded by heavy gates and government restrictions. The sheer scale of the engineering defies easy explanation, as the city was designed to sustain 20,000 people, complete with ventilation shafts, oil lamp niches, and massive circular stone doors that could only be sealed from the inside. These rolling stone barriers, weighing up to 500 kilograms, suggest a population living in a state of constant, calculated paranoia, prepared to vanish beneath the surface at a moment's notice. The air inside is unnervingly still, filtered through 52 vertical shafts that reach down to the groundwater levels, ensuring that even the deepest inhabitants could breathe while the world above remained oblivious to their existence. Looking down into the dark, narrow stairwells, the geometry of the tunnels appears almost too precise for the tools of antiquity, featuring stable arches and multi-level intersections that prevented the soft tufa rock from collapsing under the weight of the mountain above. Archaeologists have identified stables, cellars, storage rooms, and even religious spaces. Yet the deeper one descends, the more the purpose of the rooms becomes obscure. The temperature remains a constant 13 degrees Celsius regardless of the season, creating a climate-controlled environment that feels detached from the natural cycles of day and night. Shadows stretch long against the soot-stained ceilings where ancient torches once burned, marking the paths of a civilization that chose to live in total darkness rather than face whatever threats roamed the surface. Despite decades of study, the true origin of Derinkuyu remains a subject of intense academic debate, with theories ranging from the Phrygians in the 8th century BC to earlier Hittite populations. The most unsettling aspect of the site is not what has been found, but what remains hidden behind the locked iron grills of the lower depths. Only 8 of the 18 known levels are accessible, leaving more than half of the city shrouded in absolute mystery and structural uncertainty. Beyond the final permitted gallery, the tunnels narrow and descend into a labyrinth of unmapped chambers where the oxygen levels drop and the silence becomes heavy. These 10 forbidden lower levels are officially sealed due to the risk of cave-ins and the ongoing nature of the excavations, keeping the final secrets of this stone hive buried in the crushing weight of the Turkish soil. The city concludes not with a final room, but with a series of unexplored shafts that disappear into the blackness of the 85th meter. The simple act of human breathing acts as a silent catalyst for destruction within the sealed chambers of the Mogao Caves. Located at a strategic oasis along the Silk Road in Dunhuang, China, this massive complex of 492 painted temples remains one of the most restricted archaeological sites on the planet. While the desert sands have preserved these structures for over a millennium, the modern presence of oxygen and carbon dioxide poses a terminal threat to the fragile pigments coating the walls. Authorities have strictly prohibited access to the vast majority of the caverns, allowing visitors into only about 20 select areas under heavy surveillance and rotating schedules. The air inside these ancient hollows is monitored with surgical precision, as even a slight rise in humidity from a small group of people can cause the 1,000-year-old plaster to flake and dissolve into dust. This labyrinth of sandstone cliffs holds a visual history spanning from the 4th to the 14th century, yet it exists in a state of permanent quarantine to prevent the atmosphere from erasing the past. The scale of the restriction is absolute, turning a global treasure into a forbidden zone where entry is dictated by censors rather than curiosity. The landscape surrounding the caves is a harsh expanse of the Gobi Desert, where the Singing Sands dunes tower over the river valley, creating a natural barrier that kept these secrets hidden for centuries. Inside, the darkness guards miles of intricate murals and thousands of statues that transitioned through dozens of dynasties, reflecting a fusion of cultures that no longer exists. The mystery deepened significantly in the year 1900, when a hidden door was discovered behind a fresco, leading to a small, cramped chamber that had been walled up for 9 centuries. This secret space, now known as the Library Cave, contained a staggering hoard of more than 40,000 manuscripts, silk paintings, and rare textiles stacked from floor to ceiling. The documents were written in languages that have long since vanished from the earth, including Tocharian and Khotanese, providing a glimpse into a lost intellectual world. However, the discovery led to a rapid and controversial dispersal of these treasures, as foreign expeditions transported the lion's share of the scrolls to museums in London, Paris, and St. Petersburg. Today, the physical emptiness of the Library Cave serves as a stark reminder of the massive collection of 40,000 stolen relics now scattered across the globe. "600 stone steps, carved directly into the vertical face of a jagged rock, rise out of the freezing Atlantic waves without a single handrail or safety barrier for protection. This is Skelig Michael, a twin-peaked volcanic crag located 12 kilometers off the coast of County Kerry, where the isolation is so absolute that the modern world feels like a distant memory. The site serves as one of the most restricted historical monuments on the planet, protected by a combination of treacherous maritime conditions and draconian administrative rules. Access is strictly controlled by a permit system that renders the island a forbidden zone for the vast majority of the year, opening a tiny window of opportunity only between May and September. Even during these months, the ocean often dictates its own terms, as heavy swells and dense Atlantic mists frequently force the cancellation of all transit, leaving the island in total solitude. The monastery itself, perched 600 feet above the churning white foam of the sea, dates back to the 6th century when ascetic monks sought the ultimate form of spiritual withdrawal. They lived in dry stone beehive huts that still cling to the precipices, structures built without a drop of mortar that have somehow withstood over 1,000 years of salt spray and gale-force winds. The landscape is a stark contrast of dark, jagged slate and the brilliant green of hardy mosses, surrounded by a sky filled with thousands of gannets and puffins. These birds are the primary reason for the severe human restrictions, as their nesting grounds are fragile and easily disrupted by the presence of outsiders. The government maintains a permanent exclusion zone to prevent the erosion of the ancient stairways, which are crumbling under the weight of time and the elements. Every stone step shows the wear of centuries, and the lack of modern infrastructure means that one wrong move leads directly to the abyss. This creates a paradox where a site of global historical importance remains practically invisible to the public eye, hidden behind a wall of bureaucratic quotas and environmental protections. Only 180 people are granted the legal right to step onto the stone pier each day, a tiny fraction of the millions who wish to witness this architectural anomaly in the middle of the ocean. One day of existence within these borders costs more than a week in most world capitals, creating an invisible wall built not of stone, but of currency. The Kingdom of Bhutan operates on a principle of high value and low impact, enforcing a mandatory sustainable development fee that effectively closes its gates to the casual traveler. Paro Taktsang, known as the Tiger's Nest, hangs precariously on a sheer cliffside 900 meters above the valley floor. Yet the physical climb is not the primary barrier for the global population. Since the recent policy shift in 2022, every foreign visitor must pay a daily tax of $200 just for the right to breathe the mountain air, excluding all costs for lodging, food, or transport. This economic filter ensures that the winding mountain paths remain nearly empty, preserving a silence that is bought at a premium price few can afford. The monastery itself appears to grow directly out of the dark granite, a complex of white buildings with golden roofs that seem to defy the laws of gravity and structural engineering. In 1998, a devastating fire gutted the main structures. Yet the reconstruction was carried out with such secretive precision that the new walls are indistinguishable from the ancient original masonry. The site is shrouded in a perpetual mist that rises from the valley, often obscuring the narrow stone steps that serve as the only access point to the sanctuary. Looking up from the base of the mountain, the cluster of temples looks like a white scar against the vertical gray stone, reachable only after hours of trekking through dense blue pine forests and rhododendron groves. The air at 3,100 meters is thin and sharp, carrying the scent of burning incense and damp earth across the precipice. There are no handrails on the most dangerous stretches of the path, where a single misstep leads to a drop of nearly a kilometer into the abyss below. The architecture is a masterclass in adaptation, with wooden balconies cantilevered over the void and prayer flags stretching across canyons like colorful spiderwebs. Every stone and timber used in the restoration had to be hauled up the mountain by hand or by mule, as the terrain forbids any modern machinery or heavy equipment. Access to the inner sanctum is strictly regulated, and even those who pay the steep entry price are often barred from entering specific chambers during private ceremonies. The kingdom remains the only carbon-negative country on Earth, a feat achieved by treating its entire territory as a restricted sanctuary, where humans are merely temporary and expensive guests. It is a landscape where the state calculates its success through gross national happiness while simultaneously maintaining one of the most exclusive border policies in modern history. The tiger's nest stands as the ultimate symbol of this isolation, a fortress of solitude that remains visible to many, but accessible only to a select few who can meet the kingdom's rigorous financial demands. Bhutan does not seek to be discovered or explored by the masses, instead functioning as a sovereign entity that chooses its visitors with the same deliberate care used to place each stone on the Paro cliffside. One single night of fire ended the reign of the most powerful city on Earth, leaving behind a stone skeleton that remains under a total security lockdown more than 2,000 years later. Persepolis, located in the Fars province of modern Iran, was the ceremonial heart of the Achaemenid Empire, a sprawling complex of palaces and monumental stairways covering 125,000 square meters. Today, this site is a maze of restricted zones where the past is guarded with modern intensity, and the law strictly forbids any visitor from remaining within the ruins after the sun sets behind the Ku-i-Ramat Mountains. The mystery lies in the precise motive for its destruction in 330 BC, when Alexander the Great allegedly torched the city in a drunken act of revenge, an event that erased centuries of history in a matter of hours. The sheer scale of the ruins is overwhelming, with massive stone platforms rising 15 meters above the surrounding plain, supporting columns that once reached the height of modern six-story buildings. Dark gray limestone walls are covered in thousands of intricate bas-reliefs showing delegations from across the ancient world. Yet these silent figures are now watched by a sophisticated network of cameras and armed guards who ensure no one strays from the designated paths. The air here is heavy with the scent of dry dust and sun-scorched stone, and the silence of the desert is broken only by the wind whistling through the gate of all nations. Scientists and archaeologists work behind barriers in areas strictly closed to the public, attempting to decipher inscriptions that haven't been read for millennia. The architectural precision is baffling, as the massive blocks were joined without mortar, using iron and lead clamps that have survived earthquakes and invasions alike. Even the drainage system beneath the city is so complex that it still functions during rare desert rains, a subterranean labyrinth that remains largely off-limits to exploration. The prohibition on night visits is absolute, turning the ancient capital into a ghost city where the shadows of the past are left entirely alone under the stars. While the ruins are visible during the day, the most sensitive excavation zones are hidden behind high fences and monitored around the clock to prevent any unauthorized documentation of the site's deepest secrets. The most severe restriction involves the sky above the palace complex, as the authorities treat the airspace with the same paranoia as a military base. Any attempt to launch a drone to capture the symmetry of the Apadana Palace from above results in immediate detention and criminal prosecution, as the Iranian government views unauthorized aerial footage of this heritage site as a threat to national security. Satellite data from NASA once identified a thermal anomaly so extreme that it challenged the known limits of terrestrial biology. In 2005, a remote sensor recorded a surface temperature of 70.7 degrees Celsius, the highest ever measured on the face of the Earth. This is the Lut Desert in southeastern Iran, a vast stretch of hyper-arid terrain where the heat is not merely a weather condition, but a physical barrier that renders the central zone a true forbidden territory. The landscape is dominated by massive yardangs, gargantuan ridges of sand and rock carved by relentless winds over millennia, standing like the ruins of a ghost city. Between these structures lie the Gandum-Berrian Plateaus, covered in dark volcanic pebbles that absorb the sun's radiation with terrifying efficiency. The ground here acts as a heat sink, radiating energy back into the thin air until the atmosphere itself becomes a shimmering, lethal haze. Scientists have classified the core of this desert as an abiotic zone, a term reserved for places where life, even in its most resilient microbial forms, is effectively absent. The heat penetrates so deeply into the soil that no seeds can germinate and no insects can survive the midday peak. From a high altitude, the region appears as a sea of bronze and obsidian, marked by perfectly straight corridors of sand that stretch for hundreds of kilometers without a single sign of vegetation or water. The scale of the silence is absolute, broken only by the sound of stones cracking under the pressure of rapid thermal expansion. Access to the interior is strictly controlled, not by fences or guards, but by the reality that an unprotected human body would reach critical failure within hours of exposure. Even specialized research teams must time their movements with surgical precision to avoid the windows of peak radiation. The light here is blindingly white, washing out the horizon until the sky and the burning earth merge into a single, monochromatic void. While other deserts host nomadic tribes or resilient desert foxes, the central Lut remains a void on the map of the living world. It serves as a stark laboratory for planetary science, mimicking the scorched surfaces of inner planets where atmosphere and heat create a permanent state of sterilization. The ground is often covered in a crust of salt and mineral deposits that glitter like ice, a cruel visual paradox in an environment where moisture has not existed for centuries. Every year, the shifting dunes bury and uncover ancient geological formations that no human eye has ever seen from the ground level. It is a place where the laws of ecology are suspended, replaced by the raw physics of thermodynamics. The Lut Desert stands as the definitive thermal pole of our world, a territory where the sun has claimed total sovereignty over the land. In January 2012, a remote expedition near the border of Ethiopia and Eritrea ended in a tragedy that fundamentally changed the status of this territory for the international community. A group of European scientists and travelers was ambushed by armed men, resulting in the deaths of 5 people and the kidnapping of several others, which forced the Ethiopian government to impose strict military control over the entire region. The Danakil Depression is now a heavily militarized zone where any movement without a division of soldiers carrying automatic rifles is strictly prohibited by law. This vast basin, located 125 meters below sea level, remains one of the most volatile and inaccessible corners of the planet, guarded by the Ethiopian National Defense Force. While the landscape appears like a vivid painting of neon yellow sulfur and emerald acid pools, the beauty is deceptive and secondary to the constant threat of violence from local rebel groups. The primary reason for the total ban on independent travel is the proximity to the disputed border, where geopolitical tensions turn a simple hike into a high-stakes survival operation. Soldiers in camouflage are a permanent part of the horizon, standing watch over the hydrothermal fields to prevent further incursions or abductions. The climate adds another layer of hostility to this forbidden sector, as the Danakil Depression holds the record for the highest average temperature for an inhabited location on Earth, staying at 34 degrees Celsius throughout the entire year. Even at night, the heat radiating from the cracked Earth rarely drops below 30 degrees, creating an environment that feels physically oppressive to the human body. The air is thick with the smell of rotting eggs due to high concentrations of hydrogen sulfide, making it difficult to breathe without protective gear. Visitors who manage to secure the necessary military permits are restricted to specific paths and must remain within sight of their armed escort at all times. Any deviation from the approved route is met with immediate intervention, as the terrain is riddled with hidden thermal vents and areas of political instability. The vivid colors of the Dalol volcano are framed by the dark silhouettes of soldiers standing on the salt ridges, creating a sharp contrast between natural wonder and military necessity. It is a rare paradox where the most visually striking landscape on the continent is simultaneously a graveyard for those who ignored the warnings of the local authorities. The silence of the salt flats is broken only by the sound of military boots crunching on the mineral crust. A constant reminder that in this part of Ethiopia, safety is a luxury provided only by the barrel of a gun. This is the only landmass on Earth where no government holds sovereignty, yet it remains under the most rigid legal lockdown in human history. While maps show Antarctica as an open expanse of ice, the reality is a complex grid of invisible borders enforced by 54 nations under a single treaty signed in 1959. This document effectively froze all territorial claims and transformed an entire continent into a restricted zone where the concept of freedom of movement simply does not exist. Access is not granted by right of travel, but through a labyrinth of governmental permits that are almost impossible for an individual to obtain. The legal framework of the Antarctic Treaty System prohibits any military activity, mineral mining, or unauthorized presence, creating a silent, white fortress protected by international law. Looking across the horizon, the landscape appears as a seamless sheet of crystalline white and deep sapphire blue, where the wind carves ridges into the ice that resemble frozen waves. The scale is staggering, with ice sheets reaching a thickness of over 4,800 meters, heavy enough to depress the Earth's crust below sea level. In this void of human habitation, the silence is absolute, broken only by the shifting of glaciers that have remained undisturbed for millions of years. The light here behaves strangely, refracting through ice crystals to create halos and phantom suns that hover over the desolate plateaus. Science is the only currency allowed, yet even for researchers, the vast majority of this territory is strictly off-limits. More than 70% of the continent is classified as specially protected areas or specially managed areas, where entry is a criminal offense without a specific federal pass. These zones are not guarded by fences or towers, but by the harshest climate on the planet and a global legal consensus that views human presence as a biological threat. Even the most experienced explorers cannot legally set foot in these restricted sectors, which are kept in a state of total isolation to preserve their primordial condition. The paradox of Antarctica lies in its emptiness, a place with no walls where you are nevertheless forbidden to walk. Every square kilometer is monitored via satellite to ensure that no unauthorized vessels or aircraft breach the perimeter of the southern ice. It remains a silent monument to international restriction, where nearly 3/4 of the land's surface is legally inaccessible to any human being. "95% of the structures forming this massive mountain complex were reduced to rubble and dust in less than a single year." Ganden Monastery stands on the Wangbur mountain ridge at an altitude of 4,300 meters, overlooking the Kiichu Valley in Tibet. For centuries, this place served as one of the 3 great university monasteries of the region, a sprawling city of stone and faith that seemed untouchable due to its remote location. However, the events of 1966 changed the landscape forever, when the site was systematically dismantled during the Cultural Revolution. What remains today is a paradox of modern reconstruction and ancient silence, a place where the physical walls have been rebuilt, but the doors remain firmly bolted against the outside world. The monastery is situated within a high security zone, where the concept of independent travel does not exist. Any attempt to reach these heights requires a special government permit and the constant presence of state-sanctioned guides, making it one of the most monitored religious sites on the planet. From a distance, the white walls and golden roofs appear as a cohesive monument. Yet the closer one gets, the more the restrictions become apparent. Vast sections of the interior halls, once home to thousands of monks, are now designated as restricted areas where even authorized visitors are forbidden to step. The landscape is dominated by sharp contrasts between the restored red facades and the gray, jagged peaks of the surrounding mountains. The air at this height is thin and cold, carrying the scent of juniper smoke that rises from heavy stone burners. Yet the silence is often interrupted by the visible presence of surveillance systems. The reconstruction efforts that began in the 1980s have partially restored the silhouette of the monastery against the sky. But the internal life of the complex is shielded by layers of bureaucracy and physical barriers. While the exterior suggests a return to tradition, the reality is a strictly controlled environment where every movement is logged and every prayer hall is subject to sudden closure. It is a fortress of memory where the past was erased by force and the present is defined by total isolation. The golden tomb of the founder, which was once destroyed and later painstakingly recreated, sits in a hall that remains off-limits to almost everyone who manages to reach the summit. The irony of Ganden lies in its visibility. It stands prominently against the horizon for miles, yet remains practically unreachable for those who wish to see it without a shadow of oversight. The massive stone staircases lead to doorways that have not been opened for decades, creating a labyrinth of inaccessible history. The sheer scale of the rebuilding process is evident in the thousands of tons of stone carried up the steep slopes. Yet this monumental effort serves a space that is largely empty of its original inhabitants. Access is a privilege granted only under the strictest conditions, ensuring that the secrets of the mountain ridge stay confined within the rebuilt walls. The monastery stands as a reconstructed shell where the most sacred chambers are protected by modern locks and ancient stone. In the spring of 1974, a group of local farmers digging a well near the city of Xi'an struck a layer of hard red earth, inadvertently unearthing one of the most guarded secrets of the ancient world. They expected to find water, but instead they stumbled upon a fragment of a terracotta face staring back at them from 2 millennia of silence. This was the first glimpse of the Terracotta Army, a silent legion of 8,000 unique soldiers, horses, and chariots standing in precise battle formation to protect the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, in the afterlife. While the world marveled at the excavated pits, the true heart of this necropolis remains a forbidden zone, strictly off-limits to any human presence. The massive burial mound, a man-made hill 350 meters in diameter, sits untouched and silent, rising above the landscape like a warning. Chinese authorities have officially halted all plans to excavate the central tomb, fearing that current technology cannot preserve the treasures hidden within or protect researchers from what lies beneath the soil. The soldiers visible to the public are merely the vanguard, a decorative outer layer of a much larger, darker mystery that encompasses nearly 60 square kilometers of underground tunnels and chambers. Beneath the grassy surface of the mound, a grand palace is said to exist, a replica of the emperor's earthly empire, complete with cities, towers, and celestial maps. The most chilling aspect of this forbidden site is not the clay army, but the chemical reality of the ground itself. Ancient records claim the tomb contains vast rivers and seas of flowing liquid mercury, mechanically circulated to mimic the flow of the Yangtze and Yellow rivers. Scientific probes and soil analysis have confirmed these accounts, revealing mercury concentrations nearly 100 times higher than natural levels in the surrounding area. The Earth here is literally toxic, saturated with the silver metal that was meant to grant the Emperor eternal life, but now serves as a lethal barrier. Every statue found so far possesses distinct facial features, hairstyles, and expressions, suggesting they were modeled after real individuals who lived 2,200 years ago. Yet the man they serve remains encased in a tomb that no living person has seen. The air inside the sealed chamber is likely thick with poisonous vapors, preserving a subterranean kingdom that remains one of the few places on Earth where modern science refuses to tread. Even the most sophisticated non-invasive scans show a complex structure of stairs and hallways, yet the entrance remains hidden, protected by the weight of the Earth and the lethal promise of the mercury tides. The Emperor intended his resting place to be a private universe, and 20 centuries later, the silence of the mound suggests he succeeded. One of the largest archaeological sites ever discovered is also one of the most restricted, a place where the boundary between history and legend is guarded by a sea of liquid silver. More pyramids stand in this single desert stretch than in the entirety of Egypt, yet the world remained largely unaware of their existence for centuries. The pyramids of Meroe rise from the orange sands of eastern Sudan like sharp, narrow teeth, marking the final resting place of the powerful kings and queens of the Kingdom of Kush. While the structures in Giza are famous for their massive scale, Meroe offers a different kind of enigma, characterized by steep slopes and a density of construction that seems impossible for such a desolate environment. Over 200 pyramids are clustered here, some standing just a few meters apart, creating a jagged silhouette against the horizon that defies the traditional image of royal necropolises. The sandstone blocks have weathered into deep shades of rust and charcoal, scorched by a sun that keeps the ground temperature high enough to blister skin. Most of these tombs date back to the 3rd century before the Common Era, serving as the center of a civilization that rose to power while the rest of the ancient world was in flux. The mystery lies not just in their construction, but in why such a massive concentration of royal power has remained hidden from the global lens for so long. Unlike the crowded plazas of Cairo, the silence here is absolute, broken only by the shifting of dunes that periodically swallow and then reveal the smaller shrines. The architectural style is distinct, featuring narrow bases and steep angles reaching up to 30 meters, which gives the landscape an alien, repetitive geometry. Archaeologists have struggled to decode the Meroitic script found on the walls, a language that remains one of the great unsolved puzzles of the ancient world, leaving the specific rituals and beliefs of this site trapped in stone. The isolation of these ruins is not a result of geography alone, but of a complex web of modern political barriers that make the site one of the most difficult places on Earth to visit. Obtaining a visa requires navigating a labyrinth of bureaucracy that often leads to a dead end, as the government carefully controls who enters the territory. The region is haunted by a history of internal conflict, and the military coup in 2019 effectively pulled a curtain over the desert, turning the pyramids into a forbidden zone for the international community. Even when the borders are technically open, the lack of infrastructure and the constant threat of instability ensure that the number of visitors remains near zero. These stone sentinels stand in a state of suspended animation, protected by a desert that few are permitted to cross, and a political climate that views outsiders with deep suspicion. The jagged tops of the pyramids were famously lopped off by an Italian treasure hunter in the 19th century. Yet even such desecration could not strip the site of its haunting, untouchable aura. Today, the shifting sands continue to bury the entrances to the tombs, while the geopolitical gates remain firmly locked, keeping the secrets of the Kushite kings away from the eyes of the modern world. The coup of 2019 transformed this archaeological treasure into a ghost map, where the path to the pyramids is blocked by checkpoints and shifting military decrees. A soldier standing on these ramparts in the 14th century would watch his own funeral procession before ever leaving the gates. This was the ritual for those exiled beyond the Jiayuguan fort in the Gansu province of China, a place known for centuries as the mouth of the empire. To pass through these gates was to step into a legal and physical void where the protection of the Ming dynasty vanished instantly. Historically, the fort served as the final western outpost of civilization, and for a Chinese citizen, crossing the threshold into the Gobi Desert was strictly forbidden under the penalty of death unless one was being officially banished. The architecture itself was designed to intimidate, featuring massive yellow earthen walls that rise 11 meters high, creating a stark, imposing silhouette against the shifting sands and the snow-capped peaks of the Chilean mountains. The fort consists of an inner and outer city, reinforced by watchtowers that seem to grow directly out of the desert floor, their surfaces weathered by 600 years of abrasive wind. Every brick was counted with such precision that legend speaks of a single surplus brick left on a ledge, a silent testament to a master builder who risked his life on a mathematical guarantee. The scale of the fortifications is meant to overwhelm the senses, with the heavy wooden gates and narrow stone passages creating a claustrophobic atmosphere that contrasts sharply with the infinite, empty horizon of the desert outside. Even today, the sense of exclusion remains absolute. While the exterior is a landmark, vast sections of the inner chambers and strategic segments of the wall are permanently sealed off from the public. Official notices cite ongoing restoration projects, yet these efforts have no projected completion date, leaving the most sensitive historical sectors hidden behind locked timber doors. The silence in these restricted zones is heavy, preserved by thick walls that block out the modern world. Scholars suggest that the structural integrity of the ancient rammed earth is so fragile that even the vibration of footsteps could cause a collapse, leading to an indefinite ban on entry. The fortress stands as a silent guardian of a border that no longer exists, yet it continues to deny access to its deepest secrets, keeping the interior halls in a state of perpetual, dusty isolation that no traveler is permitted to disturb.